Hey everybody, this is Perch. Reaching into the old mailbag, and what do we have here? We have a good "what do we think" kind of question, which is always fun. So the question goes, "Hey Perch, who do you think is throwing more support? People that bought the first Kiss issue of Son of Kal-El. This would be where John Kent kisses the God, what was it? Kids, what was that boy's name? I don't know, pink-haired dude. Sorry, people who bought the first Kiss issue of Son of Kal-El to dunk on chuds, or people who are backing Eric July's book to own the libs, because it kind of feels like the same mechanism at work in both cases. Oh man, so people are going to object to this in the comments. In fairness, I've been reading Taylor's book, and it's terrible, and I have not yet read July's. Is it available? I think you just order it. But when I first saw this campaign, had made it to the mainstream news outlets, conservative news outlets, I couldn't help but think of seeing Tom Taylor's stupid face on CNN. See, you're getting to where I get, where you just hate all of this. It just, it just makes you crazy. Pretty much as soon as I don't know. Look, you could get into liberal, conservative, and everything else, but I will stand by this. You put Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity in a room and fill it up with water. I'm just saying. I'm not complaining. just think. Anyway, sorry. Back to the mail. The other part of my question is this good for comics? That is being cannon fodder in the culture industry good for comics? Your videos have been intense but on point lately. They spark great conversations at my shop because I usually play them on a speakerphone behind the counter. Oh, nice. Okay. Tell me where your shop is. I'll come by and visit. And they'll just ramble behind the counter in real life. It'll be fun. Look, I'll put it this way, and the same answer applies to Eric July's book as it does to Kal-El in this instance, which is it can't survive on culture war controversy. Meaning, if people are like the Rippaverse is the start of a brand new comic company, it's the new mainstream. There's lots of people very excited about it. If the comic comes out and it's lousy or it's boring or it just kind of sits there. But it, quote unquote, owns the libs, and that's all it ever is, then it won't go anywhere. I mean, it will make some money, but it will be diminishing returns over time, and it won't go anywhere. At the end of the same thing with Taylor's book. If Taylor's book can't, find its storyline and actually get an ongoing audience, then no amount of liberals who are watching CNN going, "Ha ha, it's gonna get those white dudes." It can't. Well, we've already seen a little bit of that. The sales have dropped. Taylor's, Nightwing book is far more successful than his Son of Kal-El book, at least from what we can see. Now, Taylor often likes to point out, like, look, it's selling amazingly well. But I mean, I don't know. The figures that ICV2 and others come out with, granted their estimates, still show that Nightwing has a sizable lead, over Superboy. And and you go to Amazon and the Superboy trade sells, but you check back 2 days later and it's dropped far down so it's like, my point here is that a comic book can't survive on being culture war comic. It doesn't, and we've seen tons and tons of evidence. Now, Eric July brings an audience that is a fan of Eric July. And so maybe, he convinces that audience to keep buying. I mean, that's possible. And so even if the comic is kind of irrelevant, they want to support him. I suppose so. I mean, look, with a lot of these channels, there are people who go in there and throw super chats of $25, dollars or more. And if you're selling a book for $25, I mean, it's like giving a super chat. You're supporting the creator. So it's like, but your question specifically was, can a comic, work? If it's tied to the culture war, and at the end of the day, it has to have something else beyond the culture war to live. If that's all it's got, then we've seen enough evidence suggested it won't live. I think like kind of you referenced, seeing CNN do a very smug story about that. Here's a comic book that has two dudes kissing and all the right people are angry. Yeah, this is a good day in America. And then you flip over to Fox, and Fox is like, here's a comic that's not woke, anti-cancel culture, and it's good for America. That all of that coverage, it's good. Keep in mind, it certainly helped propel that one issue of Taylor's to good sales. See, it's not, you can't sit there and go, well, this is all negative. Of course not. It sold that issue, and the hype for July's book clearly had a bump for him. So I mean, there's a momentary boost to both things when you play this. But again, at the end of the day, we're how many issues past that now with Superboy? I 6, 10 issues beyond the kiss, and it's like, yeah, the book is not burning up the charts. It's not doing very well. With July's book, the book isn't out yet, but check back in 3 years from now or 2 years from now or whatever, same amount of time, 1 year after this moment. And what's he done? Is there a second issue? Is there a spinoff? Is he? I don't know. Did he fulfill? There's a lot of those answers to those questions are ultimately going to be whether the book succeeds or fails. It's that simple. And I think this is what's curious to me a little bit is both groups will say this, but when I say both groups, I'm not talking about Taylor or July. I'm talking about more the crowd that gets into owning the libs or owning the conservatives, that whatever that amorphous group is. They will say things like, hey, get rid of the nonsense and get down to business. But, they perpetuate the nonsense. This crowd does. When you see people going, I'm buying Taylor's book because it makes all the right people angry, then you're not saying I'm buying this book because it's a good book. You're not saying I'm buying it because I care or want to read this story or that any of it matters to me. You're saying I'm doing this, and 99 times out of 100 you're not doing it. You're not actually putting your money where your mouth is. And I think, by the way, that's a slight difference between the two. Is when you're DC, you're selling the Superboy book, and let's say the Superboy book is getting, I don't know, it's averaging out at like 45,000, 48,000 copies. So in theory, that's 48,000 people who came in and bought that comic. Now, of course, it doesn't work that way because comic shop orders and it sits on the shelf and then some people buy it. But, as we've talked about before, and as people like to ignore, comic shops are not in the business of just buying just thousands of extra copies of comic books just to have them rot on the shelf. I've heard that theory, floated out there. Comic shops don't have that kind of money. That's ludicrous. If you go into a comic shop, you see a lot of extra copies up on the shelf. It means the store owner overordered and screwed up. It does not mean that they're purposefully losing money because they too want to own the conservatives. It means they messed up their order. But let's say of that, I don't know, let's say 40,000 people. And maybe there's a couple people out there who are buying 10 copies of the comic for some ungodly reason. Anyway, none of those things are likely. So let's say there's 40,000 people out there who are buying Superboy for one reason or another. Some percentage of them like Taylor. Some of them like the art. Some of them like the storyline, like that John Kent's gay. Some have bought every Superman issue for the last 20 years and are just continuing to buy it because that's what they're trained to do. I don't know, a lot of reasons. The point here is that the people that you see online who get really fussed, like this is the greatest moment of all of comic history, that there's a kiss and dudes are mad. Those people aren't buying the comic. And you can kind of tell this because sometimes when Taylor posts or when CNN posts or whatever, you see, 80,000 likes. And then you go to the sales of the comic and you're like, all right, it didn't sell that much. So people are liking it, but they're not liking it enough to actually go buy the comic. Now in July's case, I would suspect, and of course I don't know, one advantage / disadvantage to him using his own website and platform is that he controls more of those numbers, and there's it's what he will share is what we will see. I still think it's good to have your own website. I think that's a solid move, and more people should do it. But you're going off of what he's publishing out, and so what you don't know is how many of the people who are like, yeah, I'm supporting non-woke. I mean, how many of those people are saying that but actually not buying it? My guess is more people are actually buying July's book who hold that stance. I think if they're going to go online and talk about, the culture war and cancel culture and no woke or whatever it happens to be, my guess is those people are ponying up the cash to buy the comic more than the people who talk about, owning the dude bros with a kiss are buying the comic. I just think the audience is skewing. I mean, at the end of the day, keep in mind, no matter what Taylor says or CNN says, DC has been publishing comics for decades. And this is kind of the weird, awkward part. Their core audience is not involved in the culture war, didn't come for that reason, really just came for comics. And that's why you see this slow bleed out as customers go, yeah, I don't want any part of this. So, but July's comics started from his live streams, from his point of view. So the premise of the comic, if it is like his show or what he brings to the table, is going to be a lot more connected from the beginning. I don't know if I'm making this point. My point is that his comic is wired to him, whereas DC has been out for decades and it's had lots of different hands in that and lots of different people shaping it. So no matter what Taylor says about kind of the culture and everything else, if you kind of take a step back, you go, well, DC Comics has been going for, decades and decades and decades, and we'll see if 20 years from now, if the main thrust of DC Comics is going to be social justice. I'm not even sure that's the main thrust now, but if you go on Twitter, it seemed that way. So DC has a track record of proving that things shift over time. I mean, hell, will Taylor's run even be remembered 10 years from now? Maybe. 20 years from now? Unlikely. And that's not even a knock against Taylor. Most runs aren't. And these moments are going to kind of disappear into memory. If I had a very engaging, fierce argument with the comic creator over this. We were like, no, what was the thing? I think they were arguing for, God, I don't remember. It was the wedding of Wiccan and Hulkling in the, hey, quick trivia time. When did that wedding take place? Anybody know? Can anybody tell me that issue? Some of you will be able to. I guarantee in 5 to 10 years, nobody will be able to answer that question. It was connected to Empire, by the way. Remember that event? The event that happened during the first year of COVID. Anyway, the point is, your memory of like these major events in comics, you may remember 100 of them if you're a super big comic fan, but there have been tens of thousands of comics printed. A lot of stuff gets memory hold. This is going to be one of them. Anyway, good question, good debate. We'll see. We'll see who. Now, my question to all of you is, who will lose their mind more in the comments? Anyway, like and subscribe. YouTube's pruning a bunch of you off, so feel free to resubscribe if you like. Or if you don't want to be pestered with a bunch of nonsense, don't resubscribe. And if you listen to the show regularly, YouTube's algorithm will recommend it to you anyway. So, yeah. Either way, thanks for listening.